I've been taking 911 calls for 19 years. I've heard car accidents and house fires and medical emergencies, and once, on a January night in 2019, I took a call from a man who'd survived something I still don't talk about at dinner. I know what an emergency sounds like. I know the particular quality of a voice when it's describing the worst moment of a person's life. So when the call came in at 2:17 on a Tuesday morning in August, and the voice on the line said, "Yes, I need to report that my master key is not working and I cannot access the property." I recognized two things immediately. I recognized the voice, and I recognized that what I was hearing was not an emergency. What I was hearing was Donna Hartwell making the single most consequential mistake of her 3 years as HOA president. She had no idea I was the one taking her call. My name is Kevin Ray Doss. I'm 47 years old, and I work as Senior Emergency Communications Coordinator at the Blount County Emergency Communications Center in Maryville, Tennessee. I've been in this building, or versions of it, since I was 28, starting as a line dispatcher and working my way up to the Senior Coordinator position on the overnight shift. My wife Renee is a registered nurse at Blount Memorial Hospital. We've spent most of our marriage on opposite schedules, me working nights, her working days, meeting in the middle in a way that sounds harder than it actually is when it becomes the rhythm of your life rather than a disruption to it. We've owned our house at 4214 Ridgemont Commons Drive in Alcoa for 12 years. Alcoa is a small city of about 10,000 people sitting directly beside Maryville in Blount County, 20 minutes south of Knoxville. The kind of place that doesn't get mentioned much in national conversations, but that people who live there tend to stay in for generations. We paid $231,000 for the house, a four-bedroom craftsman with a covered front porch and a detached garage I'd converted into a workshop over 4 summers. Renee had a garden in the back that had grown from a few tomato plants to a full quarter-acre of raised beds and fruit trees that the neighbors asked about regularly. Ridgemont Commons was 86 homes built between 2003 and 2008, governed by an HOA with dues of $280 per month and a CC and air document 31 pages long. For most of our 12 years there, the association had worked the way it was supposed to. Common areas maintained, pool kept up, occasional parking disputes resolved by reasonable people having reasonable conversations. The presidents came and went without leaving strong impressions. Donna Hartwell became president 3 years before that August morning, 61 years old, a former office manager for an insurance agency in Maryville, who'd spent so long in procedural authority that procedure had become her primary mode of relating to the world. She drove a 2020 Camry in midnight black metallic that she kept in a condition suggesting cleanliness was a moral matter, and she'd moved into Ridgemont Commons 7 years earlier after a divorce that her neighbors had assembled a picture of through fragments and inference over time. When Donna ran for president, she ran on standards and accountability, which weren't bad things to run on. The pool had maintenance issues, the South Common area, landscaping was overgrown. The mailbox bulletin board was a chaos of outdated flyers. She fixed all of it in her first 6 months. The problem was that fixing legitimate problems didn't satisfy the underlying need that had motivated her to seek the position. The need wasn't a well-maintained community. The need was a domain of unquestioned authority, and once the legitimate problems were addressed, the domain started expanding to fill whatever space was available. The first violation notice arrived in September of her first year. It cited the height of my backyard fence, which I'd installed in 2016 with a permit. And in full compliance with the CC&Rs, I went out with a tape measure the same day. My fence was 5 feet 11.5 inches at its highest point. The CC&Rs allowed 6 feet. I sent Donna a photograph of the tape measure against the fence. She sent back a note saying her measurement showed 6 feet 2 inches, and she stood by her citation. I sent a letter proposing a joint measurement with both parties present. She never responded, no further action on the fence. The second notice, February of her second year, cited improper storage of a recreational vehicle. Specifically my 6x10 cargo trailer used for hauling mulch and workshop materials. It was parked in my driveway where it had been for 3 years. The CC&Rs prohibited long-term storage of recreational vehicles on driveways, but a cargo trailer used for property maintenance didn't meet the definition of recreational vehicle under any standard reading of the provision. I wrote back with the relevant definitional language. Donna responded that the board had determined the trailer fell within scope regardless of the definitional language. I requested the board resolution supporting that determination. No resolution was ever provided. The third incident was May of her second year. My son Tyler, 14 at the time, was playing basketball in the driveway on a Saturday afternoon with 3 friends. Donna knocked on the door at 2:30 while I was asleep after a night shift and told Renee the activity violated the noise provision in Section 11.3, which prohibited unreasonable noise between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. It was 2:30 in the afternoon. Renee told her, with the measured firmness of a nurse who'd spent 20 years dealing with unreasonable demands in high-stakes environments, that 4 boys playing basketball on a Saturday afternoon weren't subject to the noise provision at any reading. Donna put it in writing. I filed the writing. By that third incident, I had a folder. 3 tabbed sections, correspondence organized chronologically, photographs attached where relevant. I'm a 911 dispatcher. Documentation isn't just a professional habit, it's the medium through which the work exists. Every call generates a record with a case number, a timestamp, a transcript, an audio file. Handling a significant ongoing situation without maintaining an organized record felt as foreign to me as going to a job site without tools. In early July of Donna's third year, I received a formal notice on HOA letterhead stating that a board-authorized property inspection would be conducted at my address on July 19th between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., and that if no resident was available to provide access, the HOA's master key would be used to enter the property for exterior inspection purposes. I read Section 14, 2 of the CC&Rs, which authorized periodic compliance inspections. It did not authorize entry into a residence. Inspections were explicitly limited to exterior and structures visible from common areas. The master key provision was in Section 4.8, covering genuine emergencies requiring a determination by 2 board members before the key could be used. Property compliance inspection was explicitly not listed among the triggering conditions. I called Pam Witt, a 38-year-old attorney in Maryville, who specialized in HOA law and civil matters. She'd been recommended by my neighbor Marcus Webb at 4198, who'd had his own run-in with Donna 2 years earlier and resolved it quickly with Pam's help. I explained the notice. She called back that afternoon. The inspection authority under 14.2 is real, she said, but the master key language has no basis for this purpose. You have the right to refuse entry, and I'd recommend you do it in writing before the 19th. If they use that key without consent and without an emergency basis, that's criminal trespass under TCA 3914-405, regardless of HOA officer status. She paused. I changed the locks on July 14th. A licensed locksmith installed new deadbolt systems on the front and back doors. I sent a certified letter to the HOA board that same day, addressing Donna Hartwell as president, informing the board that the lock system had been changed and the previously distributed master key would no longer provide access. The letter cited Section 8.3 of the CC&Rs, which required owners to notify the HOA of security changes within 14 days, confirming I was in full compliance, delivered and signed for on July 16th, 3 days before the scheduled inspection. On July 19th, I was home asleep after an overnight shift when the Arlo camera I'd installed on the garage in June picked up Donna's arrival at 10:15. I watched her on my phone from the bedroom. She rang the doorbell twice. Tried the front door lock with her key, tried it again, tried it a third time, walked to the back gate and tried it there. Stood in the July heat, which Tennessee delivers with something close to personal animosity, and appeared to make a phone call. Then she left. I went back to sleep. The July 19th visit generated a letter citing obstruction of HOA governance authority and threatening fines of $200 per week until inspection was accommodated. Pam's response the following week was precise and targeted. The inspection authority under 14.2 didn't extend to forced entry. The master key provision under 4.8 was inapplicable. The $200 weekly fine had no basis in the CC&Rs, which required a cure period and formal hearing before fines could be assessed. She requested the fine notices be withdrawn within 10 business days. Donna didn't withdraw them, the fines began accumulating. 3 weeks in, by the time of the August morning I started this story with, totaling $600 in assessed but unenforceable fines, the folder now had a fourth tab labeled Illegal Fines. I want to be precise about the night of August 15th because sequence matters. My shift started at 10 p.m. I settled into my position at the coordinator's station at the Blount County Emergency Communications Center on Louisville Road in Maryville, a building most residents have driven past without knowing what happens inside it. Our center handles 911 calls for all of Blount County. We run an average of 340 calls per shift on a busy night, dispatching fire, EMS, and law enforcement. I supervise 4 to 6 dispatchers, manage the computer-aided dispatch system, and serve as the quality control checkpoint for everything that comes through. It was a steady night. A structure fire in the county that resolved quickly, a multi-vehicle accident on US 129. The ordinary flow of medical calls and welfare checks that make up most of overnight work. By 2 in the morning, the pace had settled to its typical rhythm. I was reviewing CAD logs when the call came through at 2:17:43 a.m. My dispatcher, Lisa Tran, 34 years old and one of the sharpest people I've worked with in 2 decades, took the call. I was 5 feet from her, reviewing a log on my own screen. I wasn't listening until she said, "Ma'am, can you describe the emergency?" in the tone experienced dispatchers use when they're not yet certain what they're dealing with. I heard the response through Lisa's headset speaker, tinny and compressed by the phone line, but recognizable. "Yes, I need to report that I'm attempting to access a property at 4214 Ridgemont Commons Drive in Alcoa, and the master key I have for the property is not functioning. I need an officer to respond to assist with access." I stopped reviewing the CAD log. Lisa's eyes came to me briefly, not because she knew the address or the voice, because she recognized the expression on my face, which apparently 19 years in the same kinds of rooms had not made me better at controlling in unguarded moments. "Ma'am," Lisa said, "are you in any danger at the property?" "No, but I need access for official HOA inspection purposes, and the lock has been changed without proper authorization." "Ma'am, what is your name?" "Donna Hartwell. I'm the president of the Ridgemont Commons Homeowners Association." I stood up slowly from my station and walked to the water cooler at the back wall of the dispatch floor. Stood there for approximately 30 seconds doing what I do in the moments between receiving a call and responding, the professional processing that the job requires, and that happens whether I want it to or not. What I was hearing was Donna Hartwell calling 911 at 2:17 in the morning to report that the master key she had no legal basis to be using at my home was not working. At my home, at 2 in the morning, the emergency she was reporting was the consequence of my legal lock change, documented and noticed properly, of which she'd been informed in writing 16 days earlier. She was not in danger. No crime was being committed unless you counted the one she was in the process of committing by attempting to access my property without authorization at 2 in the morning. The system she was using was the same system through which, on any given shift, I received calls about cardiac arrests, drowning children, burning structures, and violent crimes in progress. I walked back to Lisa's station and leaned down quietly. "Document everything, full transcript. I'll explain after the call," she dispatched, Deputy Frank Caruso of the Blount County Sheriff's Office, to my address at 2:19 a.m. Standard response, non-emergency classification, no lights or sirens. I watched the CAD entry populate in real time. I did not call Renee. It was after 2 in the morning and she had a 6 a.m. shift. I would tell her in the morning, which felt both inadequate and entirely correct at the same time. I finished my shift at 6:30 a.m. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 10 minutes before driving home. Not because I was upset exactly, because I wanted to be certain that when I walked through my front door, I was presenting facts and a plan, not emotion. Renee was in the kitchen in her scrubs pouring coffee. She looked at me and said, "What happened?" I told her. She set down her coffee cup with the careful deliberateness that was her version of needing a moment. Then she said, "She called 911 about your house. At 2 in the morning." "Yes." "While you were taking 911 calls?" "Yes." She picked up her coffee. "Call Pam today." I called Pam at 8 a.m. She listened to the sequence without interrupting. Then she said, "The call is a public record. Tennessee Public Records Act, TCA 10-7-503. Yes, and you have access to the full CAD log. As coordinating officer on the shift, yes, the entire incident record, timestamps, audio file, transcript, the dispatch log for Deputy Caruso's response." A pause. "Kevin, calling 911 to report a non-emergency is a criminal offense in Tennessee. TCA 3916-502, misuse of emergency communications, Class A misdemeanor. Up to 11 months, 29 days, and a $2,500 fine." She took a breath. "The recording of that call is going to be remarkable evidence." "I know what it's going to be," I said. I took the call. I spent the morning pulling the full incident record through official channels available to me in my professional capacity, documenting my request and the chain of custody in writing before touching anything. The CAD log for incident 22.08-15-0217 showed call receipt at 2:17:43 a.m., caller identified as Donna Hartwell, reported emergency as inability to access property using master key, responding unit Deputy Frank Caruso, arrival 2:31 a.m., incident closed 2:44 a.m. with notation. Civil matter, no emergency present, caller advised. I submitted a formal public records request for the audio recording under TCA 10.7.503 that afternoon, using the standard civilian request form and the $15 processing fee rather than accessing it through my professional credentials. I wanted a clean civilian record of the request. The recording arrived by email 2 business days later, 3 minutes and 12 seconds. Donna's voice, calm and precise, describing the emergency as her master key's failure on a property where she'd been notified in writing 16 days earlier that the locks had been changed. Deputy Caruso's voice, patient and final, "Ma'am, there's no emergency here. I can't compel access to a private residence." I forwarded the audio to Pam that evening. In my professional capacity, with appropriate internal authorization documented in writing, I also ran a search of the CAD system for calls from Donna's phone number over the previous 18 months. What I found added a dimension I hadn't expected. She'd called 911 on 4 previous occasions. 2 were legitimate, a medical emergency and a report of a car break-in. The other 2 were not. In March, she'd called to report suspicious activity at a neighbor's property, which turned out to be a resident power washing their driveway at 7 in the evening. In June, she'd called to report possible trespassing at another Ridgemont Commons address, which Deputy Caruso had also documented as a civil matter, no emergency present. The same deputy, 2 calls, same classification, same neighborhood, same pattern. Donna had identified the 911 system as an enforcement tool in her HOA governance approach. This wasn't a one-time error in judgment. This was a methodology. I brought everything to Pam's office, the folder with its 4 tabs, the public records request receipt and the audio file, the printed CAD records with documented chain of custody, the pattern search results. Pam spent 40 minutes reviewing everything, then looked up with the expression of someone who'd spent years trying to construct this quality of evidentiary record and rarely received it pre-organized. 3 tracks, she said, and went to the whiteboard. Track 1, civil complaint against Donna personally and the HOA board collectively. Pattern of harassment, illegal fine assessments, attempted unauthorized access. Claims under TCA 39-14-405 criminal trespass, TCA Title 66, HOA governance limitations, and the Tennessee Consumer Protection Act for improper fine assessments. Track 2. Formal complaint to the Blount County District Attorney's Office for misuse of emergency communications under TCA 39-16-502, supported by the audio recording and the certified mail evidence showing Donna had prior knowledge the key wouldn't work. Track 3. Formal notice to every HOA board member individually of Donna's actions and the board's potential institutional liability for an officer's conduct. "What do you want?" Pam asked. Renee and I had talked the previous evening, she'd said. "With the directness I value most about her, I don't want to destroy her. I want to be left alone in my own house." I told Pam, the $2,400 in accumulated fines dismissed and my record cleared. A formal documented acknowledgement that the master key had been used improperly and outside its authorized scope, a bylaw amendment making clear that emergency access provisions couldn't be repurposed for compliance inspections, and Donna off the board. That last part I'd thought about hardest, not vindictiveness. The pattern in the CAD records told me she'd do this to someone else if she remained in the position. The two prior non-emergency calls hadn't resulted in consequences because those residents hadn't had the specific professional knowledge to understand what those calls meant legally. The third time she did it, she'd called it in to the one person in Ridgemont Commons who understood exactly what it was. The demand letter went to the HOA board on August 28th, 14 pages with all 4 tabs of documentation attached. Pam had written it with the precision of someone who knew exactly which parts needed to be airtight and which parts needed only to be unambiguous. Word traveled within 48 hours. Marcus Webb texted first, "Heard something is happening? You good?" 2 other residents followed with variations of support that suggested Donna's tenure had generated a broader reservoir of frustration than she perhaps realized. The most significant contact came from Helen Park, an HOA board member for 2 years. A retired school librarian of 64 who joined the board hoping to moderate Donna's approach and found the position harder than she'd anticipated. She called me directly on August 31st, "Kevin, not everyone on this board agreed with the inspection notice or the fines. I raised concerns at the time. I was outvoted." She paused. "I've read your attorney's letter and spoken to the board's attorney separately. The board is considering a resolution. I also want to say personally that what she did with the 911 call was wrong, and I'm sorry it happened." I thanked her, told Pam. She said, "They've done their math." The DA's office opened a review of the misuse of emergency communications complaint on September 4th. The assistant DA assigned to the case requested the audio recording, certified mail evidence, and CAD records. All of it was public record. All of it had been documented through proper channels. Every piece entered through official routes with clean chain of custody documentation. 3 weeks of negotiations followed between Pam and the HOA board's attorney, Greg Summers, from a Maryville firm. Donna had her own attorney. The 3 sets of lawyers worked through positions that Pam relayed to me in evening briefings, following a consistent pattern of starting with what the other side wanted and ending with why it wasn't sufficient. The settlement was finalized on September 26th. All assessed fines, $2, $400, total vacated and removed from my HOA record. The board adopted a formal amendment to its operating procedures, explicitly prohibiting master key access for compliance inspections, requiring documented emergency determination by 2 board members and written notification to the property owner before any emergency key use. The HOA paid my legal fees of $6,500 directly to Pam's office, and the settlement included a provision requiring the board to hold a formal vote on Donna's continued service as president within 30 days, conducted by secret ballot, after being provided a full summary of the legal proceedings. Donna resigned on October 3rd, 7 days before the scheduled vote. Her resignation letter cited personal reasons and thanked the community for 3 years of service. Helen Park was unanimously elected interim president. The first action of the new board was a written notice to all residents summarizing the new master key access procedures and providing an email address for governance questions or concerns. The criminal matter resolved on November 8th. Donna entered a no-contest plea to 1 count of misuse of emergency communications under TCA 39-16-502. The plea agreement included a $1,000 fine, 12 months of unsupervised probation, and 40 hours of community service. The no-contest plea is a public record. The fine and probation are public record. The audio recording of the 911 call remains a public record, accessible to anyone who submits a standard request and pays a $15 processing fee. Lisa Tran stopped me in the hallway at the communications center the week after the criminal resolution. "I heard how it came out," she said. I asked what she'd heard. That it was the right outcome, she said, and that the documentation was perfect. I told her that was mostly Pam's work. She gave me the look people give when they know you're being modest and don't have time for it. "You had the folder before you called Pam," she said. "She wasn't wrong." Renee and I sat on the front porch the weekend after everything was finalized. November in Alcoa, the particular season that makes you understand why people stay in East Tennessee despite the summers. The air had that cool, clean quality the mountains push into the valley when the leaves are mostly down and the sky is a specific shade of November blue that only appears in this one month. Tyler was away at college. The garden was put to bed. The house was quiet in the way it's supposed to be quiet. Renee had wine. I had coffee because I had a shift in 5 hours. We watched a neighbor walk his dog down the street in the fading afternoon light. "How are you?" she asked. "Good," I said, and meant it. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Do you think she understood what she actually did? I've thought about that since. About Donna arriving at my door at 2 in the morning with a key she knew wouldn't work, and making the call she made with the particular confidence that accompanies 3 years of unchecked assumption. She'd used 911 twice before for OA disputes without consequences. She'd built a model of the world in which her authority within Ridgemont Commons was essentially unchallengeable, in which the gap between what the CC&Rs said and what she'd decided they meant was a gap that existed for her to fill. The 911 call wasn't a mistake in judgment. It was the logical conclusion of that model meeting the one person in the neighborhood who understood, from 19 years of professional experience, exactly what that call meant and what it would cost her. "I think she understood it eventually," I said. "Maybe not the way I'd want her to." Renee nodded. "That's honest. The thing that matters beyond the settlement figures and the criminal record is this." Donna called 911. The same 911 that in the previous 12 months alone had handled, in Blount County, 38 cardiac arrests, 14 structure fires, 6 drowning incidents, and hundreds of medical emergencies involving people in the kind of genuine, immediate, life-threatening situations that the system exists to address. The system she used to report her master key problem is the system through which people describe the worst moments of their lives and ask for someone to come. I've taken 19 years of those calls. I know what they sound like. I know what they cost the people making them, and what they require of the people taking them, and what happens in the time between the call and the response and the outcome. Every resource deployed by that system is a resource that exists for those calls and no others. A master key that doesn't work because the lock was legally changed is not an emergency. It is, at its core, the consequence of authority being exercised beyond its legal limits, meeting the documentation of someone who understood exactly where those limits were and had spent 4 tabs of a manila folder getting ready for the moment they were crossed. Helen Park is still interim president. She called me last week about the landscaping maintenance contract. The ordinary business of a neighborhood association doing what it's supposed to do, 3-minute call. No violation notices, no threats, no references to master keys or inspection authority, just a neighbor asking another neighbor about something that affected the community they both lived in. That's what it was always supposed to be. "I have a shift tonight. I'll settle into my station at 10, put on the headset and start taking calls. Some will be emergencies. Some will feel like emergencies to the people calling but resolve quickly. A small number will be the kind I carry home. I'll handle all of them the same way, with the documentation they deserve and the attention they require and the understanding that the system exists for people who genuinely need it. When the calls come in that actually can wait, I know what to do with those too. If you've ever had someone with just enough authority decide that a system meant to protect people was a tool they could use for something smaller and meaner than that, I'd like to hear about it. What happened? And what did you do? Leave it in the comments. I read every one.